Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming into another video. All right, so it's dang near midnight, and I got basketball on my mind despite all the different stuff going on in my world. And the reason why is because I just saw Ticket TV's video on Zion Williamson, and he believes that Zion could be traded to the Carolinas, up there with Mike, for the scoot pick for the second overall pick and possibly like the salary match. So we talked a lot about this in regards to how do you trade a high pick for a high contract without the without the framework just basically having you taking back something you don't want in order to attach yourself to that pick. And the answer is, I was listening to this one guy that I just found. I just followed. I don't remember what his name was. I think it's Crushables. I'm not sure, but he does trades and stuff like that. Just like mock trades to try to give you an overall idea of how your team could look if you rebuild it and stuff like that. So I just discovered him right now. Saw this clip, and he was essentially showing us what the trade looks like, and it was exactly what I thought. You got to trade some type of contract like Gordon Hayward. You attach the third pick. You attach future picks, and then you can swap Zion. So in other words, the Hayward toss-in contract would have to be made up for. That's it. That's what it really comes down to. And I just felt like the NBA needs to figure out a way to make that not be the case, because I don't want Gordon Hayward's contract. And I'll take the futures to make that make sense so that we can balance out the fact that Gordon must come. But wouldn't it just be easier for them to keep their picks, keep their Gordon, me get back what I want, and that be it? Why I got to do two separate trades combined into one just so I can get this off when they value the contract that I'm giving them and we value the picks that they're giving us, if I'm Mike. So it's like, do I think something like this could happen? Sure. Especially if somebody doesn't mind taking back salary and loves the idea of getting future picks on top of what it is that they're getting back with the pick. If you're just in love with getting picks and you don't mind taking back Gordon Hayward, this trade is good for you. My question is Zion Williamson's value being taken into account in regards to this? That's what I'm looking at, because after listening to Ticket TV, I don't know that Zion Williamson's not coming in with a decreased value on his name right now. But that could be worked out in the trade either way. Not necessarily important to the point I want to make, but it is something to think about. I think his value might be a little down based on the availability concerns and, of course, the drama surrounding his name, which I don't. I think it might be just a sign of him being 22 years old rather than anything really crazy going on. So, I look at that situation. I just think the NBA needs to do a job on trying to figure out how best to make these trades facilitate without salary flying back and forth that just doesn't add to anything positive. Or teams having to gut their whole team just so they can swap a contract for a trade. And what I mean by gut the team is mortgage the future. I don't want to mortgage my future taking back Gordon Hayward's contract just so I can ship out Zion Williamson and take back Scoot. Why do I want to do that? And I mean, doesn't that create an imbalance of unnecessariness, if that's a word? Like, it just seems like it does. So that's where my head goes. I just think the NBA needs to work that into the next collective bargaining agreement in a couple of years, because if I can't trade Zion Williamson for Scoot Henderson straight up, then I'm not going to be happy with the trade, and neither is the guy on the other side. That's what we want to do. That's what's best for us. Also, Ja Morant is from the Carolinas as well. Now, I know they got their point guard in LaMelo Ball. No one has any interest in moving on from LaMelo Ball. If anything, you trade Scoot Henderson so that you can keep LaMelo Ball happy. And you bring in Zion Williamson to give him a running mate. And you bring back Bridges, and you got two of the best high-fly acts the game will ever put together on the same floor. The problem with this situation is the same problem I have from a fit standpoint of Cam Whitmore going to Detroit. You just got too many people putting pressure on the rim, not enough perimeter play. You got Williams dunking the ball. You got Zion dunking the ball. You got Bridges dunking the ball. Zion and Bridges can ultimately shoot threes, but none of them going to probably shoot over 33%. Like, they can ultimately get back there, but they're not going to help each other out in regards to staying out each other's way. So you could slap players together, but you're going to need to make some moves to make it make sense. And you're removing Gordon Hayward, that's one of your perimeter threats. I just don't know that Charlotte is going to be happy with what they see. They're going to be fun. They're going to win games. But when it comes down to them trying to really win the playoffs, I think it's going to be a little tricky. Now, I like the idea of Bridges coming back, especially if he's going to be 100% healthy, all the problems behind him, ready to get back to the court. He's taking a year off. Him in shape is extremely exciting to me because I remember who he was before he got these troubles, and there's no structural damage, no injuries, and nothing. So him coming back, he was one of the best two-way players in basketball 2 years ago, and I ain't forgot that. So you add him together with Zion Williamson, you bring him back to with Williams year 2, LaMelo Ball back from the injury. I'm kind of excited about Charlotte even if they don't do anything. Even if they just draft Scoot Henderson and just slap it all together, I'm excited about them. And I think it might actually fit a little better. So that's the thing. Do I bring in Zion Williamson if I'm Michael Jordan? Sending Scoot out? I'm not doing that. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not doing that. I'd rather have Scoot for Mike and deal with the point guard problems than bring in Zion Williamson and deal with his availability issues that just aren't available right now. Now, Bridges coming back, I don't know how to view that. Will there be some concerns that keep him off the floor again? I don't know. I don't think so because he played almost 82 games the previous year. So it's like if all these concerns are shaked off, it's just like I looked at Ime Udoka. Just take a year off. Come back a year later, you'll be good. I think that year has passed for both of those guys. They should be both back in the league, back to who they used to be more or less. And so I ain't forgot about Bridges. Miles Bridges is a very, very talented defensive player, a very, very talented offensive player, and somebody who flows with a lot of the offenses that are out there in this league right now. So I don't know if I need to move him to New Orleans in order to make this make sense, in order, to make the fit make sense. Obviously, if New Orleans is moving on from Zion, they probably don't necessarily want to bring in Bridges for the character concerns, but I would take him. If I'm losing Zion, I want Bridges back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him involved in this trade. Wouldn't shock me. So these are the type of things I'm just thinking about because I just don't know if the fit. You're going to be burly, strong, and exciting to watch, but is the fit going to make sense actually? Or are these guys going to be bumping each other on the way to the rim? And so that's just what I'm looking at from a fit standpoint if Charlotte really wants to do that. Again, we talked about Zion Williamson, his situation. I made a little quick video on that telling him he needs to slow down. There's too many different things going on around his name. I know he's 22 years old. When I was 22, I didn't have any sense at all, and I also didn't have no money. So I can only imagine how much more difficult life would have been for me if I would have been a 9-figure guy with the circumstances of being 22 years old and famous. But all in all, he just like I said about Ja, man, you gotta have the right people. Your family got to be in your corner in such a way that ain't just about enjoying the paradise that is your life right now, but also helping you preserve it as you're a 22-year-old man who could very easily teeter either way, just like everybody else at that age. So I look at him and I look at John Morant, and I just say they're both from South Carolina. Michael Jordan has a team there he's ready to sell. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to try to go get Ja too if you can. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to bring both of them South Carolina guys, misfits, back home to the Carolinas and try to see if you can go forward with that. Because I'm telling y'all, nobody wants to trade LaMelo Ball. I ain't saying that you should shop LaMelo Ball. As a matter of fact, I want LaMelo Ball on my team, and that is your problem, Charlotte. I, Laker fan, want LaMelo Ball here. And you know what I think LaMelo Ball would be happy with? Being a purple and gold Laker. So this is the problem that you have with LaMelo Ball. Can you actually keep him in Charlotte? Now, I'm not saying you bring them hometown kids home and they want to play for you either, but at least they're more likely to stay there because they're from there. They're not from North Carolina, but they're from South Carolina, and damn it, that's about as close as it's going to get for them as far as them having a hometown team. So I'm not certain I don't trade LaMelo Ball for John Morant or try to figure out some other way to make that trade make sense because I think LaMelo's worth more than Ja based on the circumstances of the 50-game suspension. I don't know that, in a nutshell, going to get Ja really makes sense, especially if you have to give up the value of LaMelo Ball. Nah, in a nutshell. I'm not telling y'all that makes sense to me. I'm just saying I'm brainstorming, and I'm probably not thinking LaMelo's going to stay, and I'm probably thinking I got a better chance of getting Ja at a lower price based on the suspension, and then keeping him. He's a bigger star than LaMelo, and it almost makes sense to me. Because again, you're catching both of these guys at a lower price because they're both coming off some serious stuff. And with a 50-game suspension on his hands, I could probably get Ja for dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. Because if Memphis doesn't want to go through this with him, or if they think this is going to tumble forward into something, or maybe it just trickles with him saying, I just need to change the scenery and want to go anyway, which is something that I think he's going to end up coming around to saying anyway, they probably jump ahead of that and move him. They see the Zion situation going, and they see an opportunity for them to jump in and probably get value for that guy. So if I'm Memphis, I ain't thought this out, as far as my perspective on Memphis. Maybe if I'm Memphis, I don't do that because his value is low. He will be coming back, and when he does come back, we could probably trade him then if we want to trade him and have his value up after the 50-game suspension. But again, if you want to get your season started the right way and you've already made the decision to move on from Ja, then you're probably looking to move him right now. So these are the type of things I'm brainstorming. I'm like, look, if I'm Michael Jordan, I want to sell this damn team. LaMelo Ball is a fantastic player, but I could probably get that team off if Ja and Zion is on it just the same. Because that's the key. Mike's selling the team. So it got to be as attractive as possible. Now, with two misfit hometown boys on the team, is it more attractive than it was if you don't get those misfits, especially since you got Bridges too? Again, ain't thought that out. I'm brainstorming as we speak. But these are the type of things you got to consider when you have a small town team that you can't get nobody on. And you luck into this second overall pick, but it don't necessarily fit what you got. So these are the type of things I'm like, do I want to move on from LaMelo at all? Nah, I might as well just keep Scoot, right? Scoot don't have none of these problems. He don't have Ja's problems. He ain't got Zion's problems. I'd probably be better just doing everything different with Scoot. But if I'm trying to sell the team, I probably want bigger stars in place than Scoot right now. Scoot has to develop himself into that star. Ja's already that. LaMelo's already that. Zion's already that by name. So it's like, if I'm just looking at what it is to see there, I wouldn't be surprised if Mitch Kupchak tries to make a play for both Zion and Ja. I kid you not. Because at the end of the day, you want to get as many big stars on this small market team as possible to make it so that it's as attractive as possible for the next owner. And some owners may actually be excited at the fact that you have these two high-profile misfits in place that'll probably pack the house in Charlotte. Because at the end of the day, they would be the biggest star Charlotte ever had from home. And it could be a beautiful thing if they get their heads together a year and a half from now. You won't even remember these problems, and you got John Morant and Zion Williamson tearing up the league. Two of the biggest athletes on the planet. The best athletes on the planet. So it's like, I like LaMelo Ball, but am I certain his genetics ain't going to have it so that he has injury issues like his bro? I don't know that. Because from where I'm sitting, they both are starting to have injury issues. So don't I jump ahead of that if I really think that's a problem? Especially if I think he's going to leave, which I personally, BDF, thinks LaMelo's out of there at some point. Probably not soon, but like when he finishes getting all of his money from Charlotte, I'm pretty sure he's going to be looking to take a bag somewhere else. Clippers, Lakers, Knicks, something like that. He going to probably leave that small town. He ain't from there. He ain't got no ties there. If it wasn't for his daddy sending him to Lithuania, he wouldn't even want to be there. So it's like, these are the type of things I know. I know this. So what I do is I move on from LaMelo if it can land me Ja and Zion. I don't have to move Zion. I don't have to get Zion in that trade because obviously the second overall pick is what's coveted. But the point is, it may make sense to trade for Ja. It may make sense to trade for Ja. It may make sense. Especially if you're giving up an exorbitant amount of picks any damn way. It looks like you're about to give away picks to, or wait a minute. No, you would be the guys taking back picks. I think Zion and then no, for the salary match, it's confusing. Hayward goes to New Orleans. You got to attach picks to Hayward to make that happen. So picks go out for you to get picked back. So that does change what I'm saying. But I don't know if you want to make a trade that sends more picks out after you do something like that. I don't think you do. I don't think you do. So it then becomes a situation where you're mortgaging the future of the new owner. Some owners don't care about that because you're seeing owners do that. A-Rod. But it's not a good formula, and if they're learning anything from A-Rod, they won't do it. Because A-Rod's about to trade Karl Anthony Towns, which adds another variable to the conversation. Maybe Karl can be thrown in there for salary too. Ayton, there are other teams, a third team that you could throw in to try to make all this make sense. Maybe send one of those players to one of those places. I'm starting to think if my gears are grinding and LaMelo becomes available, I'm starting to think, okay, Phoenix is going to want that point guard. Possibly, maybe they can throw Ayton in and maybe whatever the heck they can pull off to get one of those players or something like that. John Morant landing in Phoenix if something else goes left outside of my scenario. But the point is, these are the type of things we're thinking about. You brainstorm these things this offseason because it looks like big names can move. Uh, and like I said, we don't know what Ja's suspension is. I said 50 because I just assume it's going to be something like that. But we still have not gotten that information. But I think once we get that information, it's going to be a lot harder to trade Ja. So I don't know. I don't think if I'm a betting man, I'd probably say Memphis ain't going to trade him at all. If I'm a betting man, Michael ain't thinking about moving LaMelo. This is all coming from my skull, but I know Ja is from Carolina. I know Zion's also from Carolina. So it's like my suggestion to the Charlotte Hornets, I think I made a video probably like 2 months ago saying that if I had the Hornets, I would bring hometown kids to me. When Ja first started having problems, that was my suggestion to this camera. Like, Mitch, go get some guys that you know are gonna stay there, guys that are from there. That's what I would do. I wouldn't have no, qualms with bringing in every dude that ever played in South Carolina, North Carolina, Duke, from South Carolina, from North Carolina. The whole team would be full of those guys, because I don't think I would have any chance of keeping anybody else in Charlotte. And so I don't know if somebody saw my video or if that's just common sense. You see these guys from the Carolinas having these problems that could potentially be on the trade block. You got to go get both of them. And that's what it really comes down to. But if you're conscious of fit, then this is the very reason why you don't draft Scoot Henderson. So it's just it's one of those situations where my scenario, I don't think is actually going to happen, but it is definitely something that I think should be thought about, because at the end of the day, Ja Morant is one of the biggest stars in the world, and he's also somebody that's probably not going to be staying with the team he's on for long. And he's somebody that's probably more likely than most superstars to stay in Charlotte, especially if they have a player like Zion next to him, Bridges next to him. Them boys going to be flying and giddy and gritty, and it's going to be fun when they all get their head on straight. And the thing about these guys, this is what these organizations have to understand. Zion is 22. It is day one. Ja is 24? It's day 2. These guys got a long career ahead of them. You're moving on from them very early, and it's for immaturity reasons. There's not a 23-year-old in the world that's not going to be immature in some way. Some are worse, some are better. But this generation, if you're giving up on them early, you got to understand they're going to come back and beat you when they're 28, 29 years old. They're going to be stomping you out. So that's what I'm telling the Memphis Grizzlies. That's what I'm telling the New Orleans Pelicans. There's reason to believe that Zion Williamson is going to have trouble getting on the court because of all of the stuff being said about him. Not only in regards to his availability and his situation with his off-the-court stuff, but also his eating habits, which have been spoken on a lot. And so it's like if Zion Williamson can start to mature in that way, some people never do, obviously. Some people just eat bad. But if he's going to be serious about his career, if he's going to get scared straight by what's going on right now, the first thing he needs to do is get himself a nutritionist and discipline himself against what it is he's used to, as we always talk about on my channel. Conditioning your mind. That's going to be important for Zion in his maturity process. But his athleticism and his ability to dominate a basketball court is something that really needs to be studied by the New Orleans Pelicans before trading him, because I know y'all fed up with the kid. You're fed up with the child Zion. But the child Zion is never what you invested in. The body Zion is what you invested in. And while it's not taking care of itself, and we always did say New Orleans was the worst place for him because of the food there. At 22 years old, I can't see myself giving up on one of the most important draft prospects in the history of the sport. It is easy to forget with Wembanyama coming in that Zion Williamson was the last guy they said was the biggest draft prospect in the history of the sport. But he was who they were saying that was. And what he had that made him that has not left. He's just got to get his maturity up to par, and that comes with time. And if you don't give him that time, and if you don't have that patience, you're not going to have the fruit on the other side of the rainbow. You're not going to get what's there to receive in regards to what's best, because you're only going to take on the worst of his youngsterness, so to speak. Didn't develop him, and now you're going to send him somewhere else for him to get his head right and come back and average 30 against you. So I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen in New Orleans. I know what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen. Zion's talent is undeniable. His maturity level, his eating habits, and all of that put him at risk. He's going to have to figure that out. Moving on from him probably makes sense if you're New Orleans based on that. So I see both angles and I respect both angles. They've been dealing with this kid. They put a fat clause in his contract. He didn't even keep up with it. Like, it's, at some point in time, you just got to say this guy's not going to reach his potential because of his habits. But 22 years old, I think it's too early. It's too early to make that decision. Now, if he's 24, 25, and he's still doing these things, you probably wish you did move on from him at 22. But I look at that specimen, I say, boy, he going to hammer the ball home at 25, 26 years old. We're going to be forgetting all about these immaturity issues. He's going to be well on to his career. And New Orleans is going to wish they had him. So that's what I think. Ja's situation's a bit different. Ja's situation is a bit different because Ja's involved in some negativity. Ja's involved in some stuff that can end up hurting him, like for real. And you don't want to be standing next to him when all of what it is that he's welcoming comes into his life, when you got a whole basketball team to consider. You don't want a couple basketball players involved in Ja off the court activities because he's going to call for backup type stuff. You don't want none of that. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with Ja Morant. It's like, I can get with Zion Williamson and his lady issues, you know what I'm saying? He's eating issues. None of that stuff is going to have people shooting red lasers at our team bus. You feel me? But whatever Ja got going on, what he's welcoming in his life, from afar, looks like something that'll possibly have those type of incidents being something you got to hire security for. So that's just what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I'm just being honest. I think Ja Morant gotta get his whole way of going right. He gotta remember what it is he's up against right now. You know what I mean? Just like Zion does. Both of them do. They in their own way. They're dealing with immaturity issues that could have their whole careers at risk. So when you're talking about sending those two guys to the same place, maybe that's the worst thing in the world. But I just feel like they both need a clean slate. They're both high profile, get people to walk through the turnstiles type of names. And when you consider what a small market team would be best for having, especially upon time for being traded, I want that kind of stuff on my team right now. Now, I'm not saying LaMelo Ball ain't also that type of draw, because I believe he is. I think LaMelo Ball is definitely the type of guy that you want on your team to help, booster everything. He's a star, and he's going to be a superstar if the game catches up. But for me, it's not about that. It's about 3 years from now, when the new owner's in place, will this kid dart? You know what I'm saying? And if that's the case, will that be a deterrent to my team selling? Would that be a deterrent anyway? You weigh that against the problems of Ja Morant and Zion Williamson, and it just depends on who the owner is and what they're concerned about. So I can see it either way. That could be a problem too. Like, I'm not buying a team with Ja Morant and Zion on it. Are you crazy? Like, I could totally see that being a thing too. So I just want people to know I'm just brainstorming. But all in all, I think that when you're talking about the Carolinas, you got these two guys, and they both got their value on the ground. They're both very young, immature, but clearly stars. Clearly, possibly superstars, as a matter of fact. I'm buying low, baby. I'm buying low on the hometown kids for my little team, and I'm bringing them to me. We'll figure it out. If all goes to hell, I trade all three of them. You know what I'm saying? But Ja Morant, Zion Williamson, Miles Bridges will be on the same team next year, and we will figure out the fit and everything else if I got an opportunity to make a trade like that. So I'm just letting y'all know that. That's pretty much where my head is. LaMelo Ball, if he were to re-sign with the Charlotte Hornets, play a whole career with the Charlotte Hornets, I look stupid. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit up here and say that there's a guarantee he leaves. He did play in Lithuania, and this is exactly why his dad sent him there. And I think they did a great job with that conditioning, because he ended up in a small market, and he seems to be good. So I remember that, and I want to give credit to LeVar for that. But that, I'm telling you, when I look at Lonzo's leg issues, his health issues, and I look at LaMelo's health issues, ankle was snapped and all that, I'm just like, yo, I'm not sure them kids ain't got weak bones, man. I'm not sure either one of them gonna play a full career. I'm not sure. When I look at Ja Morant, I don't have a problem. When I look at Zion Williamson, if I can get him a nutritionist, and I can get him into a church or something, get his soul right, he ain't gonna have that problem. You know what I mean? And so that's what I got to say about that. It's like, you send them to the Bible Belt, Charlotte, they're going to get right. They're going back home, so they're going to get right. You know what I mean? That's really what it is. They're going back home. And I think going back home can be refreshing for the mind and the soul for both of those young fellas who are outside of their element, getting involved in stuff that just not wise, not wise at all. So that's where I'm at, man. I don't know if you send him like John Morant. You don't want to send him to a city like LA after what he been involved in. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do that. And Zion Williamson, I think, again, 22 years old, man. He's just doing just some brainless activities out there, man. Just brainless. Some of the stuff that you do, you just know somebody ain't never been raised by nobody who ever been around nothing. That's what I'm seeing in Zion. And then I listened to his stepdaddy. God bless him. He was just giving us the, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear. This too shall pass. All the cliche stuff that we truly love on this channel, but don't necessarily think applies to the young fella. So I'm just wondering about the guidance behind the young fella as it pertains to Zion, how he fell into this in the first place. Same thing I said about Ja and T. It's like, how did he fall into this in the first place, y'all? Where we at? What are we doing while our sons are acting crazy out here? You know what I mean? Are we too busy spending their money? That's what I got to say to Zion's stepfather, too. Are we too busy spending his money that we can't really give him nothing but cliche wisdom when this boy's out here throwing the money away? Who's out here securing these bags that are supposed to be taking care of the whole family? It just seems like a bunch of mindless people, trying to guide these kids into spaces that are really going to ultimately hurt everybody. This is the same exact thing I said about Ja. Are you too busy spending this money to realize he's giving it away? You feel me? It's like, that's your money. You're spending it too. But he giving it to girls. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, come back around to understand that y'all are fathers, yo. Y'all are fathers. Stepfather or father. Y'all fathers, man. And y'all need to grab these little 22-year-old kids by the horns, sock them in his chest or something, whatever it's going to take to get them to understand that this is what's necessary for you to get on the ball, man. You can't be soft with these young kids. They $300 million men. And they're going to be worth $1 million at 30 if this keeps up, man. And that's being nice. That's assuming they're even able to keep any of their wealth, man. So I've heard of guys being that rich and going bankrupt. That wouldn't be the first NBA player to have that happen. Not at all. And it looks like they both on their way to doing that. Especially Zion, if he can't get his butt back on the court. And he keep giving all his money away to these ladies. So that's what I gotta say, man. Somebody needs to just get a hold of these guys, get some good energy into their minds. They're young, you know what I'm saying? So I like I said, when I was young, I was stupid. Well, after 22 years old, I was an idiot. Well, after 24 years old, I was an idiot. So, making decisions that could hurt me, it was not pretty. So I don't think it's one of them situations where that's abnormal. But when you got so much on the line and you're responsible for everybody else, the leadership needs to be in place. It can't just be the blind leading the blind, the youngsters leading the youngsters. It's just no. So that's my thing with both of those guys. I think they both need to change the scenery. I don't know if going back home is the answer, but if I'm Charlotte, I think it is for me. You feel me? That's the kind of thing I'm thinking. So yeah, that's what's on my mind, man. I think both of those guys have been blessed with some really, really special abilities, obviously. Really, really special abilities. And it just seems like, they're not handling their fame and their money in a way that allows them to keep it, man. Fame, yeah. Money, no. Both of them. And with Ja's case, his life could be on the line with the type of negativity that he's welcomed into his life with his actions. Simple as that. And so hopefully this suspension could scare him straight. My concern is that the suspension will allow him to fall into a depressive state, as to which he would fall back into more negativity and end up involved in one of those circumstances that we're most concerned about. But obviously keeping him on the court wasn't helping. So I'm with suspending him for as long as it's necessary to get him to get his head right. I don't know if you suspend him for the whole season, but we will see what the NBA thinks. You know what I mean? But with the incidents they're talking about and all these different things that they said they've been investigating in regards to Ja, I just look at that and say, man, we could probably be looking at 50-game suspension. I hope it's not more than that. I don't think that more is probably the way to go. But if they give him a whole year, or if they do something even crazier than that, I don't think we should be too shocked, man. I don't think we should be too shocked, because at the end of the day, whether you think what he did was right or wrong, they didn't give him a warning once. He acknowledged wrongdoing once. He said he wasn't going to do it again, and then he proceeded to do it again. And that, my friends, is something that would make it so that people want to hit you harder than maybe even reasonable, because they already gave you an opportunity. They let the world know they gave you an opportunity and you threw it back in their face, and that's embarrassing for those type of guys. So yeah, I think Adam Silver gonna come down on Ja pretty hard, man. I'm just gonna tell y'all the truth. I think he's coming down on that boy hard. So we'll see how that ends up going and how that affects what the Memphis Grizzlies decide to do, both in the draft, free agency, and of course, possibility of trade. So yeah, that's the thought, man. I hope it all works out for those young fellas. I don't wish no harm to anybody over there. I think the Charlotte Hornets are gonna be better if they make a trade like that. I really do, especially if those guys can come back. If you can just throw the year away in regards to Josh's suspension, you come back 2024 with 3 of the best athletes there is, and an opportunity for a new owner to be really, really happy. If you keep LaMelo Ball, I think you could be very happy too if he decides to stay. If he doesn't stay, the injury issues don't. If he doesn't stay, then you wish you traded him. The injury issues are obviously something that I'm starting to wonder about with him. Just like Ja. Downside to bringing both of those guys to your team, they both continue to be immature. They both can't get on the floor. Ja Morant and Zion Williamson. Ja Morant and LaMelo Ball. Zion Williamson and LaMelo Ball. You got availability concerns, possible character concerns. So I don't know if that's. I'm not bringing Ja and Zion to me unless they're from Carolina. Put it like that. If they ain't from here, I'm not making a move like this at all. That's like the key to all of this. So yeah, that is the thought, man. The NBA needs to fix this problem as it pertains to having to trade a pick for a salary dump and then having to attach picks just to get that done. It's just, I don't know if at the end of the day, if I'm Charlotte, I actually trade for Zion Williamson, giving them the second overall pick. Because it's probably just cheaper to not do that when you consider how much future picks you're going to be giving up, how much of the team's overall future you're going to give up. And Charlotte has a couple picks. I think they have 26. They have 2. That might be the only 2 first rounders they have. But I would probably try to give 26 up before I want to give any futures up. Put it like that. I would be moving that to try to keep some of my picks in hand. So, yeah, that's wild, man. That's wild. I think Zion Williamson in Charlotte. I don't know how happy he would be in Charlotte, but he's going back home. So at the end of the day, I think that could be a positive for the young fella. And like I said, the Ja Morant rumor, that's not real. I came up with that in my head. I only think that makes sense because he's also from Carolina. So don't think that anybody's rumoring that. They are not. Nobody's talking about moving LaMelo Ball at all. That's just coming out of my skull. So that's pretty much what I got to say, man. I thank everybody for watching BDL 44. I'm out.